Now we're all going to just take a slow series of deep breaths. Get yourself sitting down or lying comfortably with your feet flat on the floor. And put one hand on your upper chest and the other on your abdomen, just under your rib cage, right there. Feel yourself breathing and become aware of how deeply or shallowly you're breathing. Now, take a deep breath, feeling your abdomen rise as you breathe. Your upper hand should move very little, while your abdomen lifts your other hand. And as you breathe in, imagine a feeling of warmth passing into your mouth, down your throat, and into your lungs. Now breathe in for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly through your nose for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold for 4 again. 2, 3, 4. Now repeat. Inhale for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. And for the count of 4. And there we are. Okay. Now take a moment and see how you're feeling. And so I hope you're all seeing the first page of the slideshow. Looks like I'm sharing. So feel your body after that breathing. Did your shoulders get more relaxed? And even just 5 minutes of that abdominal breathing a day can really support relaxation, decrease stress, and improve one's sense of well-being. Even just a couple of cycles of what I call square breathing is beneficial. You're standing in line at the grocery store. Just count to 4, hold, breathe out to 4, hold. You can do 4, 5, 6. I typically use 6 now because I've been practicing this for a while. And over time, you may not even need to use your hands for this. Visualization is nice, but you can just do the breathing. And you may even want to tense your abdomen at the very end when you blow out so that you have really emptied your lungs. And then as you do that count while you've exhaled, what you're going to notice is that towards the end of that, you really want to take a breath, like you dived down to the bottom of the swimming pool and it's time to come back up. And there's this wonderful sense of relaxation, and you can really feel the air filling your lungs as you breathe in. Breathe in slowly, don't gasp. And try to expand your chest as much as you can. You'll find the routine that works best for you, but this is really part of the secret sauce of stress management. Now, why stress management? Why is that so important? Well, because it affects your vulnerability to just about any disease you can think of. So this is a slide that we ran when I did this show last month, and that was the one about the nutritionals and the nutraceuticals. If you didn't see that, you can go up to YouTube and we link from the Ask Dr. Dawn show, askdrdawn.com. There's a link to the YouTube video. There's also a list of the nutritionals. If you didn't get that the first time, it's all up there. And we talked about how there's various things that protect you, and there's each one of these things has a variation in terms of how strong was your exposure, how good is your mucosal immunity, do you have neutralizing antibodies, this is genetic, how many viral receptors, and this is true for just about any illnesses. What's your innate response? Is it healthy? Do you have nutritional deficiencies, or are you already fighting off chronic infection? Do you have autoimmune conditions? All of these things sort of affect whether you get no infection, mild infection, or serious infection. And this is not just for SARS-CoV. This is for any viral infection, and to a large extent, any bacterial infection, and any cancer. So you can see that stress has an influence over all of these. We're going to focus a little bit on mucosal immunity because stress is really important. And we're starting off just explaining why this is important, how come you need to take this 5 minutes out and do square breathing. And then we're going to cover lots of fun techniques and strategies and things you may not have thought of. So mucosal immunity involves a type of antibody called secretory IgA. This comes out in your snot, in your phlegm, and it also comes out in your mucosal, your mucus that comes off of your digestive tract. These other things, systemic immunity, these are made by antibody-making cells, IgE, IgA, IgM, and IgE. These are all made by different B cells, and their job is to just churn these out when they are stimulated. In autoimmune disease, you'll often find lots of IgA for things that the person had years ago. This is one of the reasons why back in the 80s, they thought chronic fatigue was related to Epstein-Barr virus, because there was a bump in IgG against Epstein-Barr, but that was actually just because the whole system was being stimulated. So IgA is the most abundant. It's at the frontiers, all the surfaces, and it provides a layer against infection at your most vulnerable areas. So here's an example of coronavirus trying to get into your nasal epithelial layers, and here are the cells, and the cells produce mucus. And this inner mucus layer is sort of a buffer zone, and then you have the outer mucus layer. It sort of reminds me of World War II and all those, World War I and all those barbed wire fences. But anyway, you can see the antibodies, the IgA dimers, grabbing on to the SARS, and then essentially it's stuck in your mucus. You swallow it, and out it goes in the digestive tract. So obviously we want to have a good layer of mucus, and we want to have a lot of antibody in our layer of mucus. So here's what happens with dehydration, air travel, air conditioning, cold air, and stress. The dehydration gives you less mucus, obviously, so less of a barrier. Stress lowers the number of antibodies that are present in the mucus, and if you have either one, you can get, any virus can penetrate, and that's the point. We want to be doing stuff to keep our IgA levels high, and we know stress affects them. This was a study in swimmers looking at their number of infections, elite swimmers, control subjects who were just moderate exercisers. And basically, when you started training for the swim meets, over the training season, your IgA salivary levels dropped throughout the training season. And the mean pre-training levels were you can see here, a significance to the 1,000th place in statistics. That's really big. So the number of infections was also predicted. If you looked at how far they dropped from their pre-training levels, you could pretty much figure out who was going to get a cold, i.e. a viral infection. So we're going to do another breathing exercise now. And breathing is so important for managing stress. When we're anxious or fearful, we enter into a feedback loop that results in chemicals being released that augment the stress we're feeling in our emotional brain. These chemicals also attach to receptors in our immune cells. These chemicals also directly raise our blood sugar, and this is inflammatory. Slow, deep breathing derails this entire chain of events, and it resets the system to neutral. So learning how to get out of fight or flight and in to rest and digest is a superpower, and we're going to share with you some techniques. So let's do this exercise. We're all sitting comfortably, one hand on the abdomen, the other on the chest. Exhale through your mouth, then inhale slowly through your nose for the count of 4, pushing out that abdomen as you breathe. And as you breathe in, visualize that warm air. I actually visualize light because I'm visual. So I visualize white light moving in through my mouth and sort of circulating around in my chest. Use the visualization that works for you. Hold your breath for the count of at least 4, but not more than 7. And then slowly exhale out through your mouth while counting to 8. So let me do that. I'll make noise. Here we go. Breathing in through my nose. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And breathe again. It's pretty much a thought stopper. If you've got something that's bugging you between the counting and the remembering to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, really makes a difference. Now you can try for the smooth breathing out. I made it noisy because I wanted you to hear the count, but it should be just a slow dynamic. Normally when we breathe, we go, so it's not a smooth slope, it's a ski slope. What you're trying for is, and focusing on that diaphragm, really, really useful. So we're going to walk through the self-help questionnaire, and I tried to send this out to you. Some of you shared with me that you did not get it, so I will send it out again. But this is a great way to just figure out, you know, what's my weak spot? Do I sleep? Do I engage in exercise? This is kind of the physical well-being. And then there's the social life, doing something fun. It's like a checklist. Have I the ability to comfortably say no? Do I have close and supportive relationships? Do some of my friends make me laugh? All of these things, just, you know, give yourself a grade, 1 through 5. On the quiz, I think it's 1 through 5. You just circle it. Mental, spiritual well-being. Having hope, finding meaning in life, feeling gratitude on a daily basis. And finally, life, work, and career. And I think all of us are really struggling with life, work, and career right now and worried about it. And so this is more aspirational, I think. But for those of you who are working very hard telecommuting and have lost your boundaries, this is important. These are important things to consider. I think these questions become a kind of roadmap. For those of us who experience this pandemic as a pause, it's a kind of transition. We've been gifted with a pivot point, and we shouldn't waste it. The momentum of daily life's been interrupted. The normal polarities and imperatives of daily existence have been disrupted. And these questions are a great tool to help one redirect if too many of the answers in any given category are on the low end. We're going to do a little problem solving. Anything you answer 0, well, or 1, that's a red flag. So take a closer look and see if you need to redirect. The point here is that your life, your work, and your relationships should be feeding you at least as much as they're consuming you. To quote one of my favorite oldies, so oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains and we never even know we have the key. So if you know where that comes from, you can go ahead and write it in the chat. We'll see how many people get it. And let's go on to the next slide. So here are some suggestions. And I want to take a moment to talk about the idea of gratitude. It's kind of magic trick, brainwave-wise. The emotion of gratitude creates a brainwave pattern that's very, very beneficial. There's nothing as powerful to enhance the functioning of the immune system by raising the parasympathetic tone. Remember that earlier slide about competitive swimmers? Well, those people are striving and pushing themselves physically, and their immune markers fell, and indeed their disease susceptibility increased. Pushing too hard increases your vulnerability. Being grateful makes you less vulnerable. My sainted grandmother used to say, count your blessings. It's very good advice. Focusing on gratitude shifts your central nervous system into safety mode, sometimes called rest and digest. Comment, during COVID, I've spent more time gardening and walking along the beach with my dog. We've cooked every day from fresh ingredients. I've kept a journal for 3 months. That's much longer than I've ever managed it before. But there's many things here that I haven't yet implemented. The Qigong, for example. But I'm going to work on that in the next month. That's my goal. And I announced that last week, and so far I've managed it on 2 out of 7 days. So I need to do better. But part of what I'm going to do here is also congratulate myself for getting off the dime at all. And acknowledging yourself and acknowledging your efforts. Even if you don't quite reach your goal, look at the progress. Don't, glass half full, so to speak. There's a funny joke about that, right? The pessimist says the glass is half empty. The optimist says the glass is half full. And the engineer says the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. Moving on to some more suggestions. Avoid information overload. This is, I think, a really important one. Our culture has a broken feedback loop, and it's feeding us all COVID, all uprising all the time. But you don't have to listen all the time. Choose a time to check in on the news and limit your exposure outside of this time. Tune into music on the radio and skip the newscasts. Don't follow the Facebook white rabbit or the Twitter canary down the internet rabbit hole. There be dragons. Set boundaries and guard them. I'm seeing plenty of people in my practice who've really gotten caught in the undertow, and it's tying them in knots. It's time to step away. We already talked a little bit about gratitude on the previous slide. Keep a running list of things you're grateful for on a daily basis. Write an email or a text or a letter to someone who's had a positive impact on your life. And this is a great random act of kindness. If you go back through your contacts and just, thank that college professor, thank that mother of one of your friends, people that you are still in remote contact with. I thanked my Aunt Diane for the fact that she always sends me cards. And this is since I was like 8 years old. So this is just a little thing, but it's one person on the other side of the country who thought about me and thought enough to spend money on a stamp. It's really great to give back to her that thanks and to let her know how much it meant to me. Try meditation. Now, especially mindfulness. Being in the moment is hard, but it yields high benefits if you can learn to do it. The breath work that we learned earlier on in this presentation is a good place to start. It's free and it works. But there are also many devices. If you're having trouble getting deeper, there are devices like HeartMath that are meditation trainers, and many, many online resources, including guided visualizations, progressive relaxation, and many others. Explore a little and find 1 or 2 that work for you. What I notice when I do mindfulness correctly is that my hand, which is always a little bit cool, heats up. You'll probably have a physical cue as well, perhaps a pleasant lightness or a release of tension somewhere in your body that you hadn't even noticed that you had. And this is your physiological indicator that you've arrived at rest and digest mode. Obviously, this has to be modified if you're still locked down and not going to work or school, but you still want to have a closure. And when you do go back, having a homecoming routine, something a little bit ritualistic is really helpful. I remember there was about a period during my training when I moved every couple of months for half a decade. Seemed like every couple of months. It was at least twice a year. And after a while, when I'd been living in a place for a few weeks, when I walked into the door, I'd have this feeling of relaxation when I walked through the door to my apartment. It took a while for me to feel that in the place, and you want to augment that with a ritual. It could be lighting the scented candle, turning on the right kind of homecoming music. It just needs to be a signal that you are home and safe and done. This kind of compartmentalization is especially important for the telecommuters. The old signals that work is over and relax has begun are eroded by telecommunicating. These rituals help create a boundary that signals your subconscious to switch into rest and digest. And this is something to try and negotiate with your boss and your coworkers. Essentially, ask for a curfew. 9 p.m. is, I think, very reasonable. If you break curfew, it's an emergency. And okay, that's fine if it really is an emergency. I think that's fair, and I think most things will keep until tomorrow, honest to God. It's a few things that won't. Celebrate your good habits. So, like I said, praise yourself. I do this. Good job, Don, for doing Qigong today. That's 3 days in a row. Now, that was aspirational. I haven't managed that yet. But if you skip an unhealthy habit, give yourself a round of applause. Send yourself a flower, something. And then exercise in moderation, but not to excess. Dance, hit a punching bag, walk, swim, juggle. Find something you enjoy. Fierce jumping jacks for 2 minutes every hour when I'm stuck sitting at a computer works for me. Tiny little exercise bites seem to be very beneficial. And if you think about it, there's a lot of downtime waiting for water to boil or sitting on hold when you pull out your phone. So don't do that. Don't just sit there. Do something instead. Do some squats. Sit in a chair with arms and do some and raise your body weight on your arms. And when possible, move around outside in nature. There's an additional benefit to being in nature, to being in a green space. Even on the 14th floor, one can have a little jungle in one corner of the room and explore it with a magnifying glass. And that is a tip for your friends and relatives who may be far away or stuck still in lockdown in an apartment somewhere. Get a plant and a magnifying glass and spend some time pretending that you're an ant walking around in that big jungly forest. And speaking of forests, shinrin-yoku, forest bathing, is a Japanese tradition. It's warm right now. Get as few clothes as possible or very lightweight, gauzy clothing, and get out in nature. Particularly the redwoods are great for this. And do light exercise, but hold your arms out and let your body be open to, I don't know, let's call it the vibrations of the woods. I don't know that there's anything mystical going on here. I think it's evolutionary. I think this quiet forest is our safe signal, and I think it goes back to the lizard brain, which is encased in the base of at the top of our spinal column. It is back to rest and digest, and these are all ways of taking a taste of the many wonderful bounties that surround you and really focusing there. Another thing you can do is mindful movement. This is a variation on exercise, and it's slow and very suitable for those with disabilities. It consists of mindful attention to your body and your position in space. Often movements one ordinarily does quickly and automatically are slowed down and concentrated upon. Slow movement in resistance exercises like weightlifting drastically increases the muscle benefits and reduces the wear and tear on the joints. So here's some ideas you might try. I'm very fond myself of heel to toe slow walking in either barefoot or in flexible footwear on slightly uneven ground with your eyes closed. Try this barefoot on the beach where a fall won't injure you, and walk as slowly as you can and concentrate on the sensations from your feet. If you can get yourself to focus fairly fully on the moment you're actually in, you stop being somewhere else. Biofeedback is a really great way to work. Sometimes it's helpful to have a coach initially, and there are a great number of strategies that you can learn to self-induce a feeling of calm and peace. There are also sometimes moments that are just so very threatening by nature, and it's then that I dust off my biofeedback device. Initially, I used it daily in order to learn to meditate because it really helped me get into my relaxation response, and because it would tell me when I was there. I used a product called HeartMath, which analyzes the features of my heart rate to train my brain to relax, using my breathing as a way of forcing that high parasympathetic rest and digest tone. There are also trainers like Respirate, which uses a breathing sensor, and many brainwave biofeedback devices as well. So we have some time now for Q&A. We're ready to do Q&A. So let's stop the share. Question from Stephanie. While unplugging with daily COVID news, when looking for correct info, where should we look? Okay, so that's a really excellent question. There are a couple of really good places. For lay people, I look at the Mayo Clinic's COVID space, and also our own Santa Cruz Health Department has amazing resources, and that is santacruzhealth.org. And then there is a COVID button. It has statistics, it has best practices. It really depends on what question you're asking, Stephanie. But the main thing is consider the source. My attitude is I want it to be a rich corporate entity who I can sue, and or Lancet, New England Journal of Medicine, places like that have information, but it's not at a layperson's level. So the Mayo Clinic site is really excellent, and the Santa Cruz Health Department website, santacruzhealth.org, is also very good for the straight scoop. And there's obviously been a lot of stuff that's rolled through. Hydroxychloroquine, friend sent me a text about ivermectin. Pretty much, if someone sends me a text, I pretty much don't believe it. I mean, I might go and look at the link to the article, but the standard of nobody wants to delay. So the thing that kept us from making mistakes in science, to the extent that we were protected, was the fact that we were deliberative. And because of this urgency, the deliberation's been thrown out, and a lot of things are getting retracted. They get put out there and then they get retracted. Okay, this from Dave. Are stretching exercises as effective for stress management as strength or dynamic exercises like walking? Well, I think that stretching exercises can be extremely effective for stress management when they're accompanied by deliberate, calm breathing. And I'm thinking about yoga, because a lot of yoga involves just really getting into that posture and then doing slow breathing. And I think that the breathing and the endorphins that are produced by the stretch are really going to help you get into that rest and digest. That being said, you have to you have to be sure that you're not trying to do what the instructor on the video who's been doing this for 30 years and has high genetic flexibility from birth. You can't compare your you want to watch your form and not try to do what the instructor can do, because you probably can't, and you don't want to hurt yourself. That would not be a good idea, because if you hurt yourself and you're in pain, pain's a stressor. So by all means, we want to avoid injury. And so if stretching carefully and well to the point of good stretch, no bouncing, and making sure that your position is stable so that you don't come out of your tree posture and sprain your ankle on the way down. Our healthcare system does little to help us keep a healthy heart and prevent heart disease. With all the wild times of the last couple of weeks, I can say that my heart aches. Also, this breathing is a nice way to settle my mind. Compassion is the best place to go. The Buddhists really have this one nailed. There's this life is dukkha phrase, which means, well, there's crap out there. There's crap and there's going to be crap, and you can't, and sometimes there's a sea of it. So what I do in these circumstances is, first of all, I forgive the bad actors, and I try to experience compassion for them even though they are behaving really badly. I think of a wounded, a wounded dog that bites the person trying to help it. I think of a person who's been, a tree that's been twisted and distorted and damaged by drought that drops a branch and injures somebody. Some people have genetic predispositions that make it impossible for them to engage in civil behavior. Some people have just been pushed by their life experiences to the point of reactivity and fear or anger. And honestly, honest to God, fear and anger are the same thing. They're just flip sides of a coin. So knowing that, I put myself in that compassion space. And then I look for where is there healing? Is there some healing? Is there something I can do? I've been listening to a lot of stuff lately where people talk about how, this is African Americans talking about how white people that they haven't, been contacted by in years, maybe people from school, are calling them up and asking how they are, and also saying, what can I do? And that's that spirit. It's the spirit of, where's the healing? What can I do? How can, in this moment, I help? And I think about the mask makers, right? All those people out there with their sewing machines making masks because they were compelled to do something healing. And so I think that really is a so useful way to deal with everything that's thrown at us by the news. Think about healing. So, should our exercise, this from Sharon, should our exercise levels be reduced while fighting infection in view of the effects on the immune system? Should we lower our exercise intensity? Will we lose benefits? I think it really depends upon how hard you exercise. This is not a moment, as I just said, this is not a moment to injure yourself. It's probably a moment to maintain your level of training rather than seeking to increase it a lot. But moderate exercise, follow the normal guidelines. If we're talking about running, then it should be maybe a little less speed than you could do for a little bit longer, and watch your running surface in that event. If it's weightlifting, maybe do more reps rather than adding to the resistance right now. And we all know when we've pushed too hard because we're just wiped out. So do not push to the point of being wiped out. And no, you won't lose benefits. You will maintain your current benefits. You just won't build. And right now, maybe that energy needs to go to your immune system rather than to your muscles to build a new, more actin and myosin. What supplements should we be taking to stay healthy in these crazy times? Well, let's start with vitamin A. And if you are not going to get pregnant, then 24,000 units of vitamin A day is going to help you make more secretory IgA. And you now know all about nasal mucus and IgA. Perhaps the middle school boy's fascination with boogers is now explained as a true insight and adaptive behavior. But getting back, all kidding aside, other things I really recommend are quercetin, curcumin, and green tea extract, and vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D, because it modulates the immune system. Omega-3 fatty acids. So if you're not eating low mercury fish at least every other day, then go ahead and take some omegas, maybe an EPA, DHA 1,000 milligrams just for wellness, and also because it helps your immune system be more resilient. So the thing about the immune system is it's like an arm wrestling contest, right? You've got this infection, and the immune system isn't, the wrestling is not between the immune system and the infection, which is what you might think I meant. The immune system is between the accelerator and the brake. See, the immune system has a tendency to run away with itself. And the brake is it's a little slower, so you get some acceleration, and then the braking mechanism starts. And there should be a back and forth, a fine back and forth dynamic. That's what we really want to see in this. So that fine back and forth dynamic is super helpful. And these things that I'm telling you about, the quercetin, the curcumin, the omega-3 fatty acids, the green tea extract, these things all contribute, and the vitamin D, these all contribute to that resilience and that ability for the immune system to stay in balance and handle the big reaction that a viral infection like this one causes in a naive individual who's never seen it before. The innate immunity just goes crazy. You know, it's 911 all over again. But it's a good metaphor because we had an overreaction majorly at that time in our society. And we should have had a more moderated response, a more thoughtful response. Well, let's have that this time. Vitamin C. I think vitamin C is great. 1,000 milligrams a day is probably all you need. The place where vitamin C, I think, shows real benefit is in the membrane stability area. So what I'm saying by that is in people who actually catch COVID and are starting to get sick, IV vitamin C seems to really mitigate the lung damage. And there's some decent data on that. There are people pushing for that to become standard protocol. And I'm certainly planning on, if any of my patients get sick, leveraging the fact that I already talked with the pharmacy and made sure we had that available so that we can get them on. And the dose that we're giving, it's a big dose. It's 3 grams of vitamin C every 6 hours, intravenous. And there's no way you could manage to absorb that much vitamin C through your gut. So don't even try, you'll just get diarrhea. Deb said, you mentioned in an earlier session about using colloidal silver while flying. Do you recommend this when you're going into the hospital, etc., for a test? And do you recommend giving blood during this time? I do recommend giving blood during this time because it would be tragic if anybody died of a hemorrhage from a car accident because their blood type wasn't available or couldn't be gotten to them in time because people are scared to donate blood. A medical setting like blood donation, first of all, if a person's feeling badly, they're not going to go in. Second of all, everyone's masked. Third, we're cleaning all the surfaces. The PPE is out there, and we've had a chance to recover from the initial shock and shortages, and we're pretty well fixed in this county. So this is really a good moment to go and give blood. And the colloidal silver, the other part of the question, I use it whenever I go into the supermarket. I've got a little colloidal silver spray bottle in my car, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going into the supermarket. I'm going to put on colloidal silver, squirt, mask, and off we go. So I figure I've got 2 layers of protection. Silver and copper are both very toxic to all viruses, and it's not something you can evolve a resistance to. Bacteria too, for that matter. So this is during cold and flu season, it's a great help. On airplanes, it does 2 things, one of which is it's mostly salt water, so it restores your mucus. And secondly, it dumps a compound that actually is toxic to viruses and bacteria into the mucus. So now you've got a twofer, your IgA and your silver, helping you out, keeping you safe. Dr. Fauci said the virus isn't over yet. It's just beginning. What do you think? More spikes of COVID-19 coming in a few weeks? I would say yes, more spikes of COVID-19 coming, but I don't think these are spikes anymore. I think they're surges. To speak it in surfer terms, these are going to be waves. We've got contact tracing, and we've got testing in adequate amounts that we can do contact tracing. I'd like us to be opening up more slowly than we are, but in my opinion, we're all self-actualized individuals, and we don't have to go out to dinner, and we don't have to go to the gym, and we don't have to go get our hair cut. So it's fine. I'm glad, for those businesses, maybe they'll get enough business that they can stay in business. But I think it's also reasonable to continue to be cautious. And I'm optimistic, though, because we had the Mother's Day burst, and the rates went up for a while. And as of yesterday at the county health department meeting, or this morning, no, oh my God, it was just this morning. It wasn't even yesterday. The health officer said that was a blip. It was a surge, but it wasn't a big one. And they managed to get in there with the contact tracing and get people to self-quarantine. And so it didn't keep rolling. And that's the key. If it doesn't keep rolling, then it's a series of little wavelets, and they cancel themselves out through isolation, and we don't flood the hospitals, and we don't end up with the New York scenario. And I think it's extremely unlikely we'll end up with that scenario. But I do think that it'll be a week before you know that the rates have kicked up. And so during that time, if you relax your vigilance and you stop wearing your mask and you stop washing your hands, you run a risk of community acquisition of COVID. So it's, we're going to have to be kind of fanatical about the hand washing and the masking until we get to 50 to 70% of the population. So when he says this isn't the sort of thing like the flu that is over, because we all have to get it, or we all have to get vaccinated before we stop having these little surges. So I totally agree with Fauci. I think he could have worded it a little bit better, but my God, that man is just, I think be careful what you wish for. And he wanted to be, head of infectious disease, and got it. Info about testing for COVID. What does it tell us presently? How much does it cost? And is it, in your opinion, something worth doing yet? Okay. So if you are asymptomatic, you can make an appointment down at Ramsey Park and be tested for free. And that was smart. The state is footing the bill. They can do 134 tests a day. And I did it. I was negative, by the way. I did it the last Thursday in May. And partly I wanted to just explore the process. You make an appointment online. You can also do it by phone. They give you a time. You show up at their door at the time. The room is deserted. There's a couple of people in masks and gowns. One of them basically gets the number that they gave you, and the other one swabs you, and you're out the door. Aside from the discomfort of the swab, which, by the way, should be uncomfortable, it was a great it was easy and went off without a hitch. No crowds or anything like that. So you can get tested for free. You may have to wait a week or so. If you want, I can test you. I would want to know if you were symptomatic or not, because if you are symptomatic, then we're going to test you through the public health, because their turnaround time is faster than Quest. If you are interested in confirming that you're negative, let's say you want to go and visit your mom. And so if you get tested, let's say on Monday, with the intention that you're going to visit mom on Sunday, that's pretty good. Your chances of that, what you would have to do is get tested, and then self-isolate. Let's say mom's 88. So you're going to get tested and then you're not going anywhere. And at the end of the 6th day, you got the test back. By then, it's been about 3 to 4 days for the Quest tests. The cost for the nasal swab, which tells you if you have virus in your nose, does not tell you about immunity. And it doesn't even really tell you if you're contagious, because you could have dead virus in your nose, it turns out, for several months after an attack of COVID. So it doesn't tell you, it doesn't really tell you contagious, but if you've got positive virus in your nose, you don't want to go visit your 88-year-old mom. And antibody testing is almost ready for prime time. There are 5 companies that have validated, FDA approved, not just allowed, but approved tests. And you can go to the FDA website and get the names of those companies. Quest is using one of those companies to do their tests. So I feel very confident that if that test tells me that there are antibodies, that there are, in fact, antibodies. Now, that whole question about are they neutralizing antibodies and are we sure? And the answer is there's very little in life that's sure. But the body is smart. And if you actually got COVID, you're going to make a bunch of different clones of antibodies. By the way, pitched for the YouTube site, I'm going to be doing a presentation on vaccines, vaccine production, and this was part of last week's radio program. So I think that one just went up because we were a day late. So you can go to AskDrDawn.com and listen to that. And the first half hour has a long discussion of vaccinations and vaccination technology, which will answer some more questions. As far as COVID, this is regarding development of new vaccines. Now, as far as other vaccines are concerned, Stephanie asked, what about getting vaccines at this time? Is it safe? And what should we be getting? I only get the flu vaccines and wonder if I should get others like pneumonia or shingles. And it depends upon your age and your comorbidities. I am not encouraging anybody to get shingles at this time. So the Shingrix vaccine, I should say. The old shingles vaccine was attenuated virus. Which means that the virus was not quite dead, but it was really weak. So you got a really small infection, and its ability to protect you against shingles was not all that great. So maybe a 50% improvement. The new one is like really powerful, and you get lots of antibodies. And the preliminary data, since it's been out for a few years, we can say it does reduce the frequency of shingles. You get a really good antibody bounce quite quickly. And well, the problem with that is to get that antibody bounce, they give you what's called an adjuvant, which is an irritant to the immune system. And a lot of people get a little flu-like symptoms. I would really hate to give Shingrix to someone who was incubating COVID, because I think that theoretically, at least, you could really increase their chances of getting the cytokine storm. So I would, if you think I would say pass up on the shingles vaccine right now. If you get deep body pain, particularly if you get a rash that's kind of like where a zebra stripe would be on your body, but even if you've got like a deep bruise pain without having gotten bruised and it's on your torso, you might want to give me a call and I'll write you a prescription for the drug that basically heads shingles off at the pass, and you won't have to, you will not get a heavy duty case of shingles, and maybe you'll take an unnecessary drug, but it's a benign one and it's cheap, so what the heck. But yeah, I wouldn't do Shingrix right now. Make sure your tetanus is up to date. Definitely get a flu shot. And that is not going to put you at the same kind of risk. And it is, I don't want to see people getting both flu and SARS-CoV, kind of for the same reason I don't want them to be taking the Shingrix shot. I don't want your immune system to get 2 feet on the accelerator. Tetanus is fine. If you needed, like for my job, I had to get a booster on the MMR vaccine, and I had to get a booster on the Hep B because those were things I had so long ago. And as a healthcare worker, I need to have, real vigorous antibody titers on those things. But, tetanus always, but every 5 years or, 10 years minimum, 5 years if you're a gardener. Because if you're a gardener, you're potentially going to actually get tetanus, and you do not want to get dead from it. I'm just waiting to see if anyone has any last questions. There is a general downloadable 2-page cheat sheet on nutraceuticals in COVID that gives all of the doses. And that's at the AskDrDawn.com website. It's at the top. I believe I sent that out to the Prime patients about 6 weeks ago. But if you didn't receive it or you missed it, you can just go and download it. It's right at the top. And in fact, maybe I'll take a moment and just see if I can get the browser up. Bear with me for a moment. Right. Okay, I'm going to share the screen again and just show you. So here's your nutritional recommendations for COVID-19. So there's the video from 6 weeks ago. That's a YouTube link. This was my initial corona advice that I wrote way back in like March 16th. Remember, I spent the entire Sunday, thinking about and searching for what I could possibly tell you to do. This is coming from the Academy. It's very good, and I did not make it. It's useful, and every single thing on there is science-based. So, science-based is my religion. If I'm going to tell somebody to use a certain dose of something, it's because there's data. And people have been studying this stuff scientifically since the 70s and publishing. There's a lot of data out there, and you can find it if you use scholar.google.com, but then you're going to wade through a lot of stuff to find it. So if you have a question, you always get a hold of me and ask. I'm here to help. But anyway, that's a very useful thing to pull down the nutritional recommendations for COVID-19. It's really the nutraceuticals. So I'm going to give it just 30 seconds for anyone who wants to ask a question, and I'll drink some water. Oh, did I mention staying hydrated is good for your resistance to viruses? So thank you, everyone, and I hope that this has been useful. I will be putting something together on sleep, probably in the next week or so, and sending out an invitation. Thank you all very much for coming, and have a really, really great rest of your week.